Welcome, everyone, as we begin or as we continue our deep, thorough, or as thorough as we can, uh, management of the rules of thought in group formation. That's the step we're taking today, integrating our knowledge, our love, and sacrifice, and our exploration of ideas, ideals, and illusion using rules of thought. And we're continuing with an emphasis on rules 11 through 15 today and the rules of action. And we will review rules 1 and 2. So let's be reminded of this phrase that we use all the time in esoteric teaching: energy follows thought, and what DK says about that. Martha, would you read for us?
Yes, indeed. We are not dealing here with a simple statement that thought power is an energy and that the process of thinking generates automatically an energy which produces objective forms, induces related action, and is the source, therefore, of all that appears or manifests. That is a platitude today. And humanity is increasingly aware of the subjective power of thought and of its consequences, objective realization. We are to concern ourselves with that which lies behind the mental perception of the ordinary man, and with the revelation which comes to the initiate disciple as he stands within the ashram and perceives, as a result of the initiatory process, the nature of the divine plan, as it can be seen working out on various planes of our planetary existence.
My internet connection is a little bit off today. So I'm hoping that you can still see. And if not, I will move in and out. Martha, would you continue?
Yes, I will. From The Destiny of Nations, pages 104 and 5. The keynote of human living after World War II will be struck by Russia, Great Britain, and the United States. In the hands of these nations lies the destiny of the planet. These are the three major world blocks from the consciousness angle and from the angle of world synthesis. Other and lesser nations will participate in the process with full independence and cooperation, voluntarily, and through the perfecting of their national life in the interests of the whole of humanity, and through the desire to express and preserve their soul integrity and their purified national purpose, which purification is now going on. The keynote, however, of human living will be struck by Russia, Great Britain, and the United States, not because of their power, their historical past, and their material resources or territorial extent, but because they are in a position to fuse and blend the many types, because they are far visioned in their world purpose, because they are not basically selfish in their intent, and because the government of the peoples, reaches down into the depths of each nation and is fundamentally for the people. Their basic constitution, Magna Carta, and Bill of Rights are human. Other nations will be gradually swept into line with these fundamental spiritual requirements. Or, if they are already based on these human principles and not on the rule of a powerful minority, exploiting an unhappy majority, they will cooperate freely with these greater nations in a federation of purposes and of interests until such time as all the nations of the world see the vision clear, forego their selfish aims, and agree in the unity of the work to be done for the whole. Humanity will then emerge into the light of freedom with a revealed beauty and a spiritual purpose hitherto unknown.
All around the world, in all the many groups, this triangle is being invoked in relation to these great ideas that are shared by Master Dwal Kul. So let us focus on the purification that is now going on, the transmutation that is now going on in relation to the thought forms that are being expressed in these nations as we continue to study the rules. And in our work, let us consider how we can, as groups, purify the thought forms that are being developed through the use of our three techniques: the technique of indifference, the technique of light, and the technique of the presence. And as groups move forward, the perfecting of the national life in each of these nations that can then affect the destiny of the planet from the angle of consciousness and the angle of world synthesis. So, first, let us focus on the 5 spiritual inlets. New York, the second ray of love wisdom as the soul, and the third ray of active intelligence as the personality. The integration and the fusion of these two rays to affect the nation of the United States in that triangle with London and Russia. Consider this spiritual inlet as the unifying inlet in the two triangles that were given for these spiritual inlets when the energies are entering the planetary being. This inlet reflecting the planetary soul ray and the planetary personality ray, and now affecting all of the Americas. In a triangle, connected directly with London. The fifth ray of concrete science, and the seventh ray of ritual and organization. And in this triangle, connected to Darjeeling, the second ray of love wisdom, and the fifth ray of concrete science. That triangle linking the Americas with an extended influence through London that links to Canada, Johannesburg, Australia, New Zealand, and other points around the globe. Carrying through this spiritual inlet of London, the fifth ray of concrete science and the seventh ray of organization, and linking into Darjeeling connects that influence through India's historic connection to the British Commonwealth. Now we look at the second triangle with New York as a point to Geneva, the first ray of will and power, and the second ray of love wisdom. Connecting to Tokyo, the sixth ray of idealism and devotion, and the fourth ray of harmony through conflict. So, the importance of these spiritual inlets uniting in this third triangle related to the consciousness and the emergence of consciousness through the lesser triangle of New York, London, and Russia. Russia within the influence of the first ray of will and power through Geneva, and Russia to link two ways, linking the energies of Geneva and Darjeeling. The first ray of will and power, the second ray of love wisdom, with the fifth ray of concrete science, the ray of this root race and subrace. So, with our thoughts, let us hold these great energies coming through these spiritual inlets to affect soul consciousness in humanity. And let us gather to lift our groups into a new unity embracing this highest intention, aligning with the incoming Aquarian energies, so that we may enter into a state of receptivity, holding our group purpose steadfastly, meditating to awaken soul consciousness in humanity on this higher plane of energy follows thought. We attune to Sagittarius to draw down the potent energies of the Lord Buddha, the Lord of Light, the Spirit of Peace and Equilibrium, and the Avatar of Synthesis. And we, with all groups, envisioning and utilizing this great triangle of synthesis as our focus in the creative imagination, to stream currents of dynamic force through the Lord Maitreya, the Christ, to vitalize all world servers, aspiring to assist in advancing the plan for humanity, and also meeting the immediate and emerging needs. In unity, let us envision these incoming ray energies merging and blending into and through the five spiritual inlets as we continue our focus on the rules of thought. Om, into and through the five spiritual inlets, illuminating thought forms of solution to envelop all planetary life with soul light, love wisdom, and the power to bring the five freedoms, equilibrium, peace, and harmony on this incoming fourth ray to all. Connect with all of your groups and hold the silence of the heart, uniting the five spiritual inlets. And now let us visualize the triangle of the United States, the United Kingdom, and the Commonwealth, and Russia receiving energies to purify the thoughts within that triangle. And that whenever that triangle is invoked in any of our group sessions, in the thoughts of all of our group members, that this purificatory process will proceed along the lines of the rules of thought, May the energy of the divine self be spread abroad in our hearts, through our groups, and throughout the world. In Externalization of the Hierarchy, Master D.K. wrote, "It is time now, in the face of the difficulty and seeming inadequacy, to begin the intended group work, if such a beginning is ever to be made." And we know that it was. Each group has been full organized to fulfill a specific task, and at that time, this united work had not yet been started, and that task must be begun. The way he outlined it in relation to this triangle of the United States, Russia, and the United Kingdom, which was at the time of the Second World War, was in relation to four groups: the telepathic communicators, bringing in the first ray energy; the trained observers, the second ray energy; the magnetic healers, the third ray energy; and the esoteric educators, the fourth ray energy. Setting up, in a way, that square of manifestation. And since then, these groups have developed and become active in their work. And if we consider group work at this time, we know that groups are focused with telepathy as a focus, with the dissipation and dispelling of glamour and illusion as a focus, and the ridding of world Maya through indifference. Magnetic healers are active in these groups, working on the etheric level, etheric physical, directing healing toward those points in need, in greatest need. And the esoteric educators are active, building the group Antakarana. And this is the way he described the work, that the first group telepathically influences leading people and speaks to their minds so that they may be impressed with the need, which has been described by one of the great ones as the loving salvage of the world. They must be led to realize that their policies must be determined by world good. The success that the group had in helping indicated their ability to be constructively useful. And if we reflect on active groups that we know of, you can tune into this effort to telepathically influence leaders and impress leaders with the need that has been described as this loving salvage of the world. The second group working in a constructive fashion to end some of the world glamour. And this they can do because several of the group members have successfully fought glamour in their lives. We continue this work in our own efforts with the merging of the three techniques. And we'll begin on Monday with a world glamour that we will attempt to begin to dissipate. The work of the magnetic healers, bringing group healing under direction once the interior adjustments have been made, and many of the healing groups around the world are beginning to operate as magnetic healers in these very serious needs around the world for group healing. And the work of esoteric education, and we'll talk about this more today, this attempt to aid in building the world Antakarana, working only in group formation, for that is where the work has to be done. It is not about the individual Antakarana, it's about the group Antakarana. And we must divorce ourselves as individuals from all separative ideas and learn to work in the spirit of love and with a conscious decentralization of our personalities. So, as we move forward with this notion of the rules of thought, we'll take a deep dive into centralization and what that means. But let us first envision the group Antakarana, extending from each initiate of the first degree and higher upward across the plane of the higher mind, touching the spiritual triad, imaginatively seeing the great band of light, extending that band of light to the Lord Maitreya, the Christ, the one of many names, along the rays, potently impacting humanity. In Sagittarius, we will sound the words of power. I see the goal. And through the energies of an illumined group work, draw down this light into our service. In the divine circulatory flow, putting us in touch with those in higher initiations, aligning thought, all of our ideas, and our receptivity to these incoming energies. DK reminds us that there are weaknesses to be found in all group members. Personality tendencies and errors exist, and the mistakes which involve primarily one's own interests and our own internal life, but these constitute no serious detriment to group work, for they can be overcome and rendered entirely superficial with a little effort. It's a good reminder for all of us in group work to never be distracted by anything of the personality tendency and to focus on patience. We must not have this impatience with the results already achieved. We must not have any sense of pride in what we've achieved. And certain physical failings and personal ambitions of a superficial kind are present in our groups. They were when he was working with his groups. And then he did say at that time there was even one member whose difficulties were more serious and were constituting a detriment to the group life. But let us, by using the three techniques, create great indifference to any of the personality utterances and focus on the blending of the lights and standing to align with the presence, reminding us to dissipate our own glamours and to deal with our own illusions so that we can truly serve in group formation in developing this antakarana. Andrea.
The Antakarana, a reflection, a conscious, focused attitude carried forward in all life circumstances, which automatically registers the events conditioning the life of humanity. It therefore creates a stream of ascending energy, which is tinctured by the life quality and the ray characteristics of the group personnel. Along this stream, both the ascending and the descending life quality and ray characteristics can pass at will, and the disciple will increasingly register the things of the spirit. He will consequently acquire the facility to penetrate into the world of the hierarchy and reach eventually the door to the way of higher evolution. He will again consequently function efficiently in the three worlds as the serving disciple.
We have an opportunity in our group work to recognize the life quality and ray characteristics of our group personnel. And therefore, at the beginning of our work with the three techniques integrating, I will continue to encourage each one of us to recognize not only our ray qualities, but the ray qualities of the group personnel, the ray qualities of the soul of the group members. For those, as we know, have to be brought together along all of the ray lines to create the greatest potency in our group work. So if you have been considering your own ray qualities, think of your most successful group experiences. And in touch with the group Antakarana. Notice the ascending and the descending life quality and ray characteristics passing at will. That we merge and blend together to create the group Antakarana. And if in your experience you happen to note a twinge of impatience, a spark of intolerance, a glimmer of irritation in your own equipment, utilize the triple light, that merging of the light of matter in the brain and the light of the mind, united with the light of the soul to dissipate and transform that thought into a recognition of the soul quality that came to your attention. As personalities move through the technique of integration, eventually beginning to fuse with the soul, Master DK gives 7 techniques for fusion. And as these are continuously occurring, these techniques, for those group members working through to achieve a greater soul fusion, he gives us a technique of projection, which we use projection as part of the process of building the Antakarana. So we will begin to utilize this in our work with thought and ideas. And he gives these instructions in the rays and the initiations. Heike.
In considering all these 7 rays and the technique of fusion for each, I seek to do 3 things in every case. 1. Give the technique of projection. This technique falls into 4 stages. The preparatory stage, where the consciousness becomes focused in the soul ray. An interlude in which the projecting agent realizes with intensity the existence of the point of tension and the finished product of the visualization process. A focused activity of the will, according to the ray, in which a line of light or of living substance is imaginatively and creatively sent out or projected from the mental unit, as far as possible, towards the spiritual triad, using constantly this creative imagination. This line of light, this strand or bridge, is then pictured as colored by the 2 ray qualities, and it is held stably aligned in the light of the spiritual triad, not the light of the soul. This corresponds to the much earlier stage of development in which the mind was held steady in the light. The mind still is held in this manner, but the mind, as the agent of the soul and the personality, is no longer quiescent, and itself becomes an active holding agent.
So those of us who have been in many groups in which we're fundamentally using this technique of projection, for those who have not, this may offer a point of emphasis as we move forward with the integration of the 3 techniques of light, and also as we look more closely at the impact of the Sagittarian energies that will be coming through in this next cycle, that we can then utilize under the influence of Capricorn to create a more powerful group projection. So you may want to review these for yourself in relation to your own work. This identification of the personality ray and the soul ray. And Michael Robbins did this in every full moon meditation. If you would like to follow along with the process that he outlined, that it is a critical step for us as a group to move through these rules of thought, to use the creative imagination and project from the mental unit towards the spiritual triad, and then see this line of light colored by the 2 ray qualities. And in this group, we will have the individuals imagine their rail quality and sound all into this merging light into the spiritual triad. So it's a new step in what we will utilize. Ben, are you able to read?
We are, my brothers and sisters, living in a time of spiritual crisis. When a human crisis and a spiritual crisis coincide, here comes one of the major periods of opportunity and decision in general human affairs, hence the extreme gravity of the present moment. All I, Master DK, can do is to call it to your attention. It is for you to watch and interpret current events, and it is for you to note the expression of the precipitating and penetrating energies in order to cooperate as far as your insight permits, and thus further the right production of the required effects. Through the etheric bodies circulates energy emanating from some mind. With humanity in the mass, response is made unconsciously to the rulings of the universal mind. This is complicated in our time and age by a growing responsiveness to the mass ideas, called sometimes public opinion, of the rapidly evolving human mentality. Within the human family are also found those who respond to that inner group of thinkers who, working in mental matter, control from the subjective side of life the emergence of the great plan and the manifestation of divine purpose.
We might say, in relation to this particular group and our emphasis on thought and ideas, that we are shifting our focus to that of the telepathic communicators. And we'll also integrate that in relation to this triangle of telepathic communication, trained observation, and magnetic healing as we move forward in building the Antakarana for this particular group. We have talked about these rules that we voluntarily accept, and I'm going to just move through these slides that we've covered in the past using Roberto Assagioli's technique given in the act of will to help us springboard into divine indifference. We affirm our aim to embody spiritual discernment, practice positive harmlessness, and eventually achieve this state of divine indifference in all our relationships. So let us very briefly and quickly enter into an even deeper alignment with the group soul, this group soul, as we move forward together by sounding as if the united group soul. I am the soul, as if one soul. I am light divine, as if the embodiment of light divine. I am love, as if one loving expression. I am will, as if the will of the soul. I am fixed design, as if the unified design for the fulfillment of the purpose. And we align and orient to the subjective livingness of the ashram. In this place of quietly confident, regulated effort, we orient in building the Antakarana to the beam of light that moves to the spiritual triad, where the plan and the immediate service activity are known. We are each aware of the task and equipment, and we proceed to carry out the phase of the one work, which is ours. We sense the relationship of our work to the phases of the work undertaken by our group brothers and sisters and all the active service groups. And we are learning to see the picture whole as the Master ever sees it. And in that, our confidence and security are developed. So we silently connect into that great web of light, illuminating the jewel in the lotus of our group, that central vessel, the spark of the presence in the crown of the group, the highest point of the abstract mind, spiritual telepathy, sounding Om Mani Padme Om. And we say together, we are points of light within a greater light. We are strands of loving energy within the stream of love divine. We are points of sacrificial fire focused within the fiery will of God, and thus we stand. We are a way by which humanity may achieve. We are a source of strength, enabling all to stand. We are beams of light shining upon their way, and thus we stand. And standing thus revolve and tread this way, the ways of all humanity, and know the ways of God, and thus we stand. We focus on right illumination. We understand the will and the breath are occultly synonymous terms. We work always within the law of abstraction. And today we continue our focus on the 15 rules of thought as an entirety and consider these in relation to the first 2 rules of action as we move into Sagittarius. Reminded of Dwalkul's definition of thought, this dynamic energy coming through the 5 spiritual inlets that manifest differently across the planes, governed by cosmic laws of the evolution of consciousness. And we never forget that all of us, all egos, are working in group formation, and we are under the direct control of those thinkers who embody the divine logoic thought. And our work is to swing the mind stuff gradually and increasingly under the higher impulse and away from the lower vibration until the responsiveness to the higher becomes a stable condition and the vibratory activity of the lower one fades and dies out. Catherine.
Through the etheric body, therefore, circulates energy emanating from some mind. With humanity in the mass, response is made unconsciously to the rulings of the universal mind. This is complicated in our time and age by a growing responsiveness to the mass ideas, called sometimes public opinion, of the rapidly evolving human mentality. Within the human family are also found those who respond to that inner group of thinkers who, working in mental matter, control from the subjective side of life the emergence of the great plan and the manifestation of divine purpose. This group of thinkers falls into 7 main divisions and is presided over by 3 great lives or superconscious entities. These 3 are the Manu, the Christ, and the Mahakohen. These 3 work primarily through influencing the minds of the adepts and the initiates. These latter, in their turn, influence the disciples of the world, and these disciples, each in his own place and on his own responsibility, work out their concept of the plan and seek to give expression to it as far as possible. It is, therefore, as you can surmise, a process of stepping down rates of vibration until they are sufficiently heavy to affect physical plane matter, and thus make possible the building of organized effects on the physical plane. These disciples have hitherto worked very much alone, except when karmic relationships have revealed them to each other. And telepathic intercommunication has been fundamentally confined to the hierarchy of adepts and initiates, both in and out of incarnation, and to their individual work with their disciples from telepathy in the etheric vehicle.
So this puts us very clearly in alignment with where we are on the path as individuals and where our groups are in relation to our service work. For it's all flowing through these 3 great super conscious entities. We know that. And they are working primarily to influence the minds of the 4th ray adepts, 4th ray initiates, and the initiates, 3rd ray initiates, because that is the first true initiation. So those 4th and 3rd ray initiates then turn their influence to the disciples of the world, those of us working in our own places and those of us knowing our own responsibility. And we are then able to work out some concept of the plan, and we can give expression to that as far as is possible given our equipment. And more now we work in group unity to achieve what is a shared objective. So it's really, as he says, it's a stepping down of the rates of vibration until they are sufficiently heavy enough to affect the physical plane matter. That is a very interesting concept. Heavy enough. for the possibility of building organized effects on the physical plane. Have you ever considered your focused group work, whether it is as a healing group, as a meditation group, stepping down the rates of vibration until they are sufficiently heavy to affect physical plane matter? Just a question as you move forward, as we move forward. So, again, a reminder of where we are. Above us, the spiritual triad. Most souls on this level, the vehicle of spiritual discernment, the workplace of those working for magnetic healing, the workplace, this level of response to group vibration, the workplace of those working as trained observers, and then this highest mental plane, the level of the third degree initiates, and then, of course, the adepts who have moved into relationship with the spiritual triad. So, working through the causal body, we find these emanations and we respond with ideas. And then we can formulate those thought forms using discrimination into the ideas where there is the higher clairvoyance, the planetary psychometry, and the higher clairaudience within the groups to receive in the concrete mind these teachings and methodologies for group work. And we bring together the qualities that we each strive through our rayology to manifest in group work. We find our soul qualities and we begin to experience in our groups these group qualities. We experience true compassion within the soul group, the humility within the soul group, the wisdom, sympathy, tolerance, service, sacrifice, and group love. Be able to touch then the spiritual triad and find that joy of the triad of the Buddhic plane. And bring that into expression in the group work. And we are developing a kind of cohesion then that can eventually develop into a synthesis.
In the Yoga Sutras, the mind is relegated simply to the position of an instrument, of an intermediary, of a sensitive plate, registering either that which pours into it from above or that which affects it from below. It has no personality of its own. It has no life or light of its own, except that which is inherent in all substance, and therefore to be found in the atoms which constitute the mind stuff. These latter, being along the same evolutionary line as the rest of the lower nature, swell the tide of material forces, which seeks to hold the soul prisoner and constitute the great illusion. The mind, therefore, can be cognized in two directions. First, it can be known, recognized, and seen by the thinker, the soul, on its own plane. And secondly, it can be seen and known as a vehicle of the man on the physical plane. For a long time, man became that with which he identified himself to the exclusion of the true spiritual man, who can be known, contacted, and obeyed once the mind is relegated to its rightful place as an instrument of knowledge. A physical plane analogy may help here. The eye is one of our major senses, that whereby we acquire knowledge, a medium through which we see. We, however, do not make the mistake of regarding the eye itself as a source of light and as that which produces revelation. We know it as an instrument which is responding to certain light vibrations, whereby certain information is conveyed anent the physical plane to our brain, that great receiving plate upon the physical plane. To the soul, the mind acts also as an eye or a window through which information comes, but is not itself the source of light or illumination.
Here in this reading, let's relate it back to the notion of weight, which presents us with a bit of dilemma. Because what we're talking about is vibration. And in esoteric terminology, that vibration has a frequency that has a weight. And there's also in the teachings a lot of numerology, numbers as weight, as a growing into. And this particular notion about the mind cognizing in two directions, it may be helpful because he relates it in light of the soul and to illumination to first the eye, which in the progression for magnetic healers, in radiatory healers, there's a study of the ajna center and that as a system. And one can look at that ajna system as a way to consider the increasing weight of the light in the system. So first it's found through the creative imagination, the development of the right eye and the left eye as sources of light of manas and buddhi in their first sparks, connected to the ajna center, which then in that triangle opens. And eventually, the spiritual eye develops. So the cognizing of the soul in relation to this personality instrument, which is the ajna center, as the instrument of increasing what might say is weighting of light, because there are two lobes, 48 in each lobe, and 96 in totality, which eventually becomes part of the crown center, the thousand-petaled lotus, when there is that total immersion into the light, the totality of that light. So that's cognizing in two directions, shining the light of the soul down through our triple light, the light of the brain matter with the light of mind, the soul vehicle, and that certain light vibrations then are intensifying, which is another way to think about the concept of weight. So that's what I would offer to you to consider if you're pondering on this notion of there being enough weight from the soul and the spiritual triad to illumine the ideas and then create weight within one's own being to create the fully illumined mind working with the higher light. It's just a thought. So we constantly remind ourselves that this achieving of focused attention and mental quiet so that reality can be contacted, the true and the beautiful can be registered, and divine purpose can be recorded, becoming possible to transmit to the phenomenal form upon the physical plane the needed energy. So it's a reminder to each of us to achieve that focused attention and mental quiet in all that we do. And the reminder also that the initial process of alignment is with the soul. And the secondary process, using the physical brain consciously proceeding to carry out the plan, which we construct through will and purpose, the necessitated form. And then to keep our eye on it. This is another reminder of the importance of the development of the Ajna Center, which we looked at in Taurus. But as we leave Scorpio, it's a good reminder of that Taurus Scorpio alignment. So our rules of thought that we have reviewed, we're just going to move right through these and recognizing our groups, which we have done, and that first rule of action, purity of motive, and where we're linking in our techniques, the three techniques. And here we are, watching closely the gates of thought. For in Sagittarius, it is the link to the higher mind. Sentinel desire, casting out all fear, all hate, all greed, which we've done through Scorpio, and to look out and up. So we focus on this beam of directed, focused light. The point of light becomes a beam, revealing a greater light ahead and illumining the way to the center of the light. We listen, touch, see, apply, know in order to dare. We covered that before in relation to meditation 4 and linking with the hierarchy, the spiritual triad, which is where we focus our beam of light in Sagittarius in our projection into the spiritual triad using this growing channel of light. We'll continue to ask ourselves the questions: how do we become indifferent to our own thoughts? How do we become divinely indifferent to our own ideas and our own interpretations? And how do we truly discern the thoughts that are inspired by the soul, those thoughts that lead along the path of initiation to group initiation, for that is the plan for humanity in the future? Ben,
Because the life is mostly centered on the plane of concrete life, thy words and speech will indicate thy thought. To these pay close attention.
have you found, as you consider this, have we found that we find ourselves more silent? Are we watching our words more closely? In all our relationships? Would someone like to read the second rule of action?
I can do that. The second rule of action: the ability to enter the silence of the high places will follow next. The stilling of the mind depends upon the law of rhythm. If you are vibrating in many directions and registering thoughts from all sides, this law will be unable to touch you. Balance and poise must be restored before equilibrium can be reached. The law of vibration and the study of atomic substance are closely intertwined. When more is known about these atoms and their action, reaction, and interaction, then people will control their bodies scientifically, synchronizing the laws of vibration and of rhythm. They are the same, and yet unlike. They are phases of the law of gravitation.
Again, we're reminded, if we're vibrating in many directions and registering thoughts from all sides, this law will be unable to touch you. What are you doing to achieve balance and poise, to keep the equilibrium? Stabilizing your own atomic substance. Ben,
The law of vibration. A subsidiary law under the law of economy of the 4 in number, dealing with the lower quaternary. The first of these is the law of vibration, dealing with the key note or measure of the matter of each plane. By knowledge of this law, the material of any plane in its 7 divisions can be controlled.
So here we're reminded again of this idea of measure and weight. Measure and weight of the substance, because that is the matter of each plane. And what is the measure or weight of this vibration of light in each of these planes? Think again of your aura, health aura, the physical etheric, the astral aura, the mental aura. Those 3 bodies each have a measure of substance, a vibration that integrates into the personality. And this occurs in a group, in a nation, the weight and measure, the keynote. And thank you, Ben. Also think of vibration in terms of measurement and musical notation, which takes us back to the ways in which energy manifests, first as vibration, then as light, sound, color. So we can think of this in all 4 ways, which I suspect we can correlate to the 4 subsidiary laws of the law of economy, the law of vibration being the first. Think of it in terms of vibration, light, sound, color. Ben.
One of the characteristics distinguishing the group of world servers and knowers is that the outer organization which holds them integrated is practically non-existent. They are held together by the inner structure of thought and by a telepathic medium of interrelation. The great ones, whom we all seek to serve, are thus linked, and can, at the slightest need and with the least expenditure of force, get en rapport with each other. They, the one world serving group, are all tuned to a particular vibration. In the new groups are collected together people who are very diverse in their nature, who are found on differing rays, who are of different nationalities, and who are each of them the product of widely varying environments and heredity. Besides these obvious factors which immediately attract attention, there are also to be found the equal diversity of the life experience of the souls concerned. The complexity of the problem is also tremendously increased when one remembers the long road which each has traveled, and the many factors emerging out of a dim and distant past which have contributed to make each person what he now is. When, therefore, one dwells on the barriers and difficulties supervening upon such diverse conditions, the question arises at once: what provides the common meeting ground? And what makes it possible to have an interplay between the minds involved? The answer to this question is of paramount importance and necessitates a clear understanding.
This particular passage, I think, is potently important if we think back to where we began our time together today, with the ideas related to the 5 spiritual inlets, the 2 triangles, one New York, London, Darjeeling, and the other New York, Geneva, and Tokyo. And those 2 triangles superimposed on the triangle of the United States, the United Kingdom, and Russia. And let us consider the role of the telepathic communicators and the trained observers and the magnetic healers. What provides the common meeting ground for these 3 nations? And what makes possible an interplay between the minds involved? And this is where we're going to pause and close this particular part of our time together. So, as DK laid out the crisis which continues for humanity, he put in the very beginning of Discipleship in New Age, Volume 2, this instruction. I would therefore ask you to steel your souls to endurance, knowing that the hierarchy stands. I would ask you to love blindly and unchangingly, in spite of all that may happen, knowing that love stands unmoved amid the wreckage of all around and eternally loves. I would ask you to put your hand into that of the Master and move forward with him, and in the strength of your group, irradiated by the life and light of the hierarchy, I would ask you to be a strong hand in the dark to your fellow men because you are affiliated with the hierarchy. And the love and strength of the hierarchy can flow through you if you so permit. So let us, as we move forward into Sagittarius, focus on projection of our beam of light into the spiritual hierarchy. DK goes on. I would remind you in this time of trial that I, your master, love and guard you, for your soul and my soul are one soul. Be not unduly disturbed. There is no light or dark to the soul, but only existence and love. Rest back on that. There is no separation, but only identification with the heart of all love. The more you love, the more love can reach out through you to others. The chains of love unite the world of men and women and the world of forms, and they constitute the great chain of hierarchy. The spiritual effort you are asked to make is that of developing yourself into a vibrant and powerful center of that fundamental universal love. Heike, would you close for us, please?
May the holy ones whose disciple I am show me the light I seek. Give me the strong aid of their compassion and their wisdom. There is a peace which passes understanding. It abides in the hearts of those who live in the eternal. There is a power which makes all things new. It lives and moves in those who know the self as one. May that peace brood over us, that power uplift us till we stand where the one initiator is invoked, till we see his star shine forth. Keep silence, and the light will enter in. We share our contemplative review of the rules and offer some ideas to elucidate the light of Sagittarius, a beam of directed, focused light. In this, the point of light becomes the beam, revealing a greater light ahead and illumining the way to the center of the light.